Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is the third set of our series on virtual SG, and it covers the ethnic quarters of Singapore. The itinerary begins and ends at Tourism Court at Orchard Spring Lane, where Singapore Tourism Board is located, as with all itineraries. Because of the standardization of the start and end points, coach routes would be duplicated over several itineraries. Therefore, this video will only cover the walking sections. In this set, the theme of the tour is ethnic quarters. The effect of this tour is to impress upon the visitor the multi-ethnic and multi-religious makeup of Singapore, all of which coexist and thrive in harmony with each other. Our first stop brings us to present-day Little India, with a special emphasis on Singaporean Indian culture at Tekka Market and Campbell Lane. For our second stop, we proceed to Kampong Glam, once the Malay and Pilgrims Quarter, centered around the royal residence of the Sultan of Singapore. The final stop covers the hustle and bustle of Chinatown and its relevance in majority Chinese Singapore. The three ethnic quarters unsurprisingly coincide with the three predominant ethnic groups in Singapore, mainly Chinese, Malay, and Indian, which comprise 76%, 15%, and 8% of the population respectively. The quarters are remnants of the British divide and rule construct, in contrast to today's ethnically balanced Singapore. Their organization began in 1822 under the Jackson Plan, when Sir Stamford Raffles, out of fear of the cost of managing unnecessary cultural misunderstandings and conflicts, divided the three-year-old settlement into 6 distinct districts: the Civic District, Commercial Square, Kampong Chulia, Chinatown, Kampong Glam, and European Town, after the colony's major sources of immigrants. This mandate, which guided the establishment of institutions associated with each race, then perpetuated itself beyond the life of Sir Stamford Raffles, with some minor changes over time, to evolve into the ethnic quarters of today. Today's Little India district is defined by its main thoroughfare of Serangoon Road between Bukit Timah Road and Rangoon Road. While Serangoon Road is one of the oldest roads to cross the entire island, it was not the original area allocated to ethnic Indians under the Jackson Plan. Raffles intended for ethnic Indians to settle in the area that is today's Boat Quay and Hong Lim. He called the place Kampong Chulia, named for people of the Chola Kingdom of Tamil Nadu, with that arrangement lasting from 1822 to 1860. Through a series of push factors, such as overcrowding and lack of fresh water at Kampong Chulia, and push factors such as the availability of jobs in cattle ranching and brickmaking, abundant supply of water and land, Serangoon Road eclipsed Kampong Chulia and became naturally Indianized. The area's biggest asset was the bamboo grove lined banks of Rocher River, which carried fresh water for keeping cattle. It is also the same bamboo groves that give the area its other name, Tekka, to mean at the foot of the bamboo in the Hokkien dialect. With urbanization, the cattle trade and brick kilns became given over to housing and other commercial activities. Commercial activities catering to the needs of the ethnic group thrived, alongside institutions such as Hindu temples and spice markets. We begin at Tekka Center, a market building constructed by the government in 1982 to increase the hygiene standards of public markets, which once occupied streets in makeshift shelters by the river. The building comprises three stories: a basement of individual owners selling fresh produce, a ground level for cooked food hawkers, and the second level offering sundries and other goods such as saris and Punjabi suits. This concept of a special purpose building made to rehouse street vendors is unique to Singapore and earned its place in the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage in 2020. Every Singaporean has grown up eating out in a place like this, where one is able to find affordable cooked food pandering to all races. Some commonly found items include chicken rice, minced meat noodles, otherwise known as bak chor mee, cha kway tiao, nasi biryani, mie rebus, Indian rojak, and roti prata. One can also quench one's thirst with coffee strained through a sock, or tea pulled through the tropical air in a drink known as teh tarik. With the building almost 40 years old and our population doubled to 5.6 million today, marketing activities have extended beyond these walls into the surrounding shophouses. We focus our attention on Campbell Lane, named after British merchant Robert Campbell. As with many streets in this town, the name stuck even though the person no longer lives here. Anyway, it is hardly likely anyone today would associate or know this fella. Campbell Lane today equals Deepavali Bazaar, temple supplies, traditional clothing, vegetables, and the Indian Heritage Center. Standing in the busy lane, one is likely to be overwhelmed in all senses, visually from colors of cloth and flowers, audibly the blaring horns of trucks unloading veggies, aromatically the floral scent wafting away from the handling of flower gardens. The use of garlands are an essential aspect of an Indian household. Made of flowers, leaves, grass, or fruit, the garland is a symbol of respect offered to very important persons and gods. Therefore, the garland is an indispensable object in all special events, including marriages and worship. Another commonly seen object is the coconut. Before hippies elevated this nut into a superfruit status, the fruit was already a special status item in Indian households. As a symbol of prosperity, it is often used as an offering to the gods. Its flesh and juice also find liberal use in Indian cuisine, such as curries and sweets. At the end of Campbell Lane is the Indian Heritage Center. The center, which traces the history and origins of Singapore's Indian and South Asian community, opened in 2015. Our next stop takes us to Kampong Glam, the once Malay and Arab quarter of Singapore town centered around the royal palace grounds of the Sultan of Singapore, Hussein Shah. In the 1822 plan, everything east of Park Street, today's Ophir Road, was allocated to the Malays. The settlements and playground extended into the rivulets of the Kallang Basin. Today's Kampong Glam is bounded by Victoria Street, Beach Road, Jalan Sultan, and Ophir Road. The place takes its name from the galam tree, where it was abundant. Also otherwise known as the Kajiput tree, its bark and timber are raw materials for fishing boat repairs, while the oil extracted from its leaves are used for medicine. In fact, a key ingredient of tiger balm ointment is Kajiput oil.
Extracted from the leaves and flowers of the galam tree.
Back then, this part of town was more respectfully known in Malay as Kota Raja or Kingstown, and rightly so because before us was the royal grounds of Sultan Hussein, without whom the British would not have gotten the island, and without the British he would not have been king. The centre building is the original royal palace in which his descendants lived from 1843 until 1999, when they were resettled. It is a combination of English Palladian style and Malay influence motifs. The wings were added after the site was repossessed by the government to form the Malay Heritage Centre. Like the Indian Heritage Centre, the Malay Heritage Centre chronicles the history and origins of Singapore's Malay community. As Malays are typically Muslim, the religion dominates and drives the life of the community, which thus leads us to the other significant building in town, the Royal Mosque or Sultan Mosque. The current Arab-style building was completed in 1932, funded by donations from the community. Unique to the mosque are several rows of black-colored glass bottles lining the bottom of the golden dome. They commemorate the grounds-up mosque building effort, including the donation of glass bottles from the poor. Islam is symbolized by the crescent moon and five-pointed star. The 5 points representing the 5 pillars of Islam: to pray to one God, to pray 5 times a day, to fast during Ramadan, to donate and help the needy, and lastly, to perform the Hajj. It is the last pillar, to perform the Hajj, which entails a pilgrimage to Mecca that is perhaps the hardest for Muslims. At a time when aviation was in its infancy, performing the Hajj was a 7-month round trip by steamship that a faithful Muslim would have saved his entire life's earnings for. As a major port of call and transit point in the region, Singapore naturally attracted Mecca-bound pilgrims from around the Indo-Malaya region. Friends and relatives would accompany pilgrims and also procure supplies here before the departure. Many would put up in boarding houses on this street, Bussorah Street. At the same time, procuring supplies here before the departure. This helped encourage a healthy Hajj economy. For boarding houses, shops selling religious items such as songkos, prayer mats, and Qurans. Other essentials included perfumes and rattan baskets to help maintain hygiene while sailing. When air travel became popularized and economical, Kampong Glam's role as a staging center for the Hajj became less relevant. The boarding houses are now replaced by eating places and hipster cafes, although Sultan Mosque provides some anchor for shops involved in religious goods. It might seem unusual that an ethnic Chinese majority country would have its own quarter tucked away in the central part of town. But the concept of Chinatown is a legacy of Singapore's colonial past. Initially lining the sides of South Bridge Road, the center of Chinatown shifted a block down to the larger New Bridge Road and Eu Tong Sen Street between the 1840s and 1920s. Surprisingly, a major landmark of Chinatown on South Ridge Road is a structure more commonly associated with another ethnic group. The Gopuram. The Gopuram is a South Indian style of building Hindu temples. The tall and tapering tower is stacked with figures of deities and gods above a large and imposing entrance. Its purpose is to dominate and humble a person by size. This temple dates back to 1827 and the 6-level Gopuram before us has its origins in 1925. It is dedicated to Mariamman, the goddess of rain and good health. Legend says that she was once an outcast lady who contracted smallpox. Fanning herself with neem leaves, she was cured. This temple bears special significance during Dimiti, or the Fire Walking Festival, as the venue for its performance by devotees. It is said that if one's devotion to the religion is pure and true, one would walk over the charcoal pit unscathed and obtain the blessings of the gods. Temple Street and Pagoda Street are named in reference to Sri Mariamman Temple, but they housed Chinese immigrants. Why then is a Hindu temple in Chinatown and not down the road at Kampong Glam? The reason was access to fresh water, as water was required to wash one's feet before entering the temple. It is also for this reason that Chulia Mosque is located here. In contrast to the pious buildings dedicated to gods, the shop houses lining Pagoda Street were dedicated to the devil, chock full of opium dens in the colony's infancy. The addicts were mostly coolies, stevedores who provided the muscle to move goods between ships and shores. They stayed in overcrowded conditions in these shop houses, spending a large part of their daily earnings on the drug as an escape from the pains of work. The opium concessions were so successful that the takings accounted for more than half the revenue collected by the government for upkeep and maintenance of the colony. Opium smoking was finally outlawed in 1943 during the Japanese occupation. Also on Pagoda Street, the privately held Chinatown Heritage Center attempts to recreate the experience of Chinese immigrants' lives in early Chinatown. At the making of this video, ownership of the center has been transferred to the Singapore Tourism Board and the center temporarily closed. Over at the junction of Trengganu Street and Temple Street is a remnant of another activity Chinese immigrants indulged in other than opium: opera. The street is anchored by Lai Chun Yun Opera House, which is today's Hotel Carmel. The building was completed in 1887 in the Victorian style. With the theatre and its guests came other businesses such as street food and ladies. These days, the street sees its busiest traffic in the few weeks running up to Chinese New Year, when Chinese families shop for festive goods and treats to bestow upon visiting relatives during the Chinese New Year celebrations. Similar to Tekka Market, in our first stop, hygiene and sanitation concerns led to the creation of Chinatown Complex in 1983. Vendors and peddlers of fresh produce and cooked food who once hawked their trade on the streets in the vicinity were relocated into the building. The basement is allocated to fresh produce. The first level to sundries and dried goods. And the second level to cooked food. With over 260 stalls, it makes for the largest hawker center in the country. In today's tour, we have gained insights into the origins and roots of the three main ethnic groups that comprise 99% of Singapore's citizens. Through the ethnic quarters, citizens stay in touch with their culture while they forge ahead with a new national identity. While new immigrants acquire a source of comfort and taste of home in an unfamiliar land. The relevance of these quarters will be here to stay, adding extra spice to Asia's little red melting